were at S4, to your knowledge, what was the approximate percentage of civilian versus military personnel, and in what kind of job categories?
The civilian personnel were scientific in nature, and the military personnel were only security. And as far as the percentage, it was a small percentage of scientific to military personnel.
Are there any secretaries?
I'm sure there were offices all over the place, but when I came into the facility, I was essentially escorted right to where I work and worked there, other than the few amount of times that I got to walk into the hangar and under an escort too. And when I left, it was the same. So like I said, there might be offices, there might be bunkers in there, there might be underground levels, there might be an alien nest in there. I have no idea. Excuse me?
How did you eat? How did you eat?
The only place I ever ate was at Area 51. So if there was a cafeteria there, I never got to eat in it.
You come and go with other people?
I usually came with Dennis Mariani, who was my supervisor. Now, I wasn't on a full-time swing, essentially. I flew in usually between 4 and 5 o'clock at night and left by 11. So I was only there for a short time each day.
Bob, aboard the bus from Groom Lake to Papoose, how many people were boarding with you?
Very few.
More than one, more than yourself.
It's me and Dennis, and usually, well, actually not usually, occasionally one other person.
How about Barry?
I don't think I ever saw Barry on the bus.
Just two of you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a chance that any of the workers might defect?
Barry would. That's why I spent some time trying to get a hold of him, and there was actually some time after all this hit the news and the whole thing went down, we got a call from Dennis, my supervisor, and he arranged a meeting at the Union Plaza Hotel. And when we got there, I brought 3 people with me, and I think he said he'd be in the casino area somewhere, and we went. I think Gene Huff came with me, and we went into the area, and walking down the corridor, I recognized one of the security personnel from there. And then when I finally found Dennis, he didn't even acknowledge my presence. We couldn't get his attention, and I left. So apparently, someone had known of the conversation and sent someone down there and made themselves obvious to Dennis, or something happened, and we left. But I think that was where Dennis really wanted to say something.
I understand that you used hypnotic regression to get at some of the details of your experience. If so, what is your impression of hypnotic regression as a tool?
It's probably reasonable because there are specifics. They contend that you can sit there and reread a document as if you had, as if you were there reading it for the first time. And what I was mainly interested in was in some of the schematics and drawings. And I did some of the hypnosis stuff with Lane Keck, a hypnotherapist in town, and I was certainly able to redraw a lot of the schematics and engineering drawings along those lines. And it's so as far as using it as a tool for that seems to work. For anything else, I don't know.
I have two things. One's a comment, the other one's a question. First of all, when I was 12 years old, I saw a daylight flying disc, which looked exactly like one of Billy Meyer's photographs 15 years later. And this...
You mean earlier?
No, earlier, 15 years earlier, I saw this disc, and then Billy Meyer took a photo in 1975 with exactly the same disc that I saw. So, down to the last detail, it's the same. And then you said that the sport model looked a lot like this same photo in an interview with George Knapp. And I thought that was really interesting because it kind of tied it all together for me. And then I just wanted to make that comment. And then the question I had was, what was the year of your graduation from MIT, and did you get a PhD?
No, it's a master's degree.
Just a master's.
The year, what was the year of graduation? Probably 82, because I think I left there.
Went to Los Alamos?
I went to Los Alamos.
Thanks.
Can you talk about the mind control that some people have said was used on you when you decided to leave, and also the threats?
What mind control would that be?
Someone made a comment that you might have been a victim of some sort of mind control, or
That came about by, when I was first brought there, they had a doctor, or nurse actually, in a little medical setup there, and right after I had signed all the release papers, when my first time out there, I went in and they did what I perceived to be an allergen test, because they put a grid on my arm and different, pricked me with different chemicals, and it was their contention that, well, boy, there's a lot of strange elements here and unusual things you'll be working on, so they're trying to see if you're going to have any adverse reaction to them. And I was given something to drink. I said it smelled like pine, which it did. That's the best way I can describe it. And a lot of people jumped on that, saying, aha, well, that's the mind control substance. When you leave work, you're going to forget everything. When you come back, you're going to remember everything. But I think if anything, it was an anti-allergen drug or something along those lines.
how about the threats? What kind of threats being used?
Yeah, there's plenty of threats.
Well, I mean, can you think of like bodily harm or loss of pension or what kind of stuff?
Well, the loss of pension and jail time, that was part of signing the paperwork. As far as bodily harm, after they caught us the time I brought out John Lear and a couple other people up there, then they threatened me, and they really didn't get much reaction out of that. Then they threatened my wife at the time, and they really threw out everything they could without physically attacking me.
Well, that's what I was wondering. And once they knew it was really you, not Dennis or someone else or anything, why didn't they just arrest you under charges of violating the act?
Well, they can't arrest me because they'd have to admit, that this is classified material.
Well, you were
they'd have
talking
to,
about.
Yeah, they'd have to release it. Why did they, kill me?
Right.
That I really don't know. Maybe that had to do with how I got the job, or referencing the connection to Ed Teller or something along those lines. But I don't know.
Were there any contractor names, departments, divisions that were mentioned, or signs on the wall, or anything like that, referring to any companies or anything like that?
No, but I know EG&G had nothing to do with it. That's the only light I can shed on that, because I had mentioned that to him once, because that's where I was interviewed, at the EG&G building, and I thought that it was part of an EG&G project, and I think it was Dennis who said that, we don't let those people, anywhere near this place, or any, they were just a sore thumb to them.
Well, as one way of getting this information out, and at the same time to have the government stop harassing you, did you ever consider bringing them to court? Suing
what
them,
charge?
well, threatening you and your family, harassing you, and as a result of that, forcing them to...
With what evidence would I do that? I mean, it's hard enough to prove it to, the layman in general, but taking it to court, it's impossible. I mean, there's there's plenty of people that don't believe me anyway.
So you never sought out legal counsel with regard to any of this?
Well, a little, yeah, initially, and the bottom line is, the attorney said there is absolutely nothing to go on. It's a total waste of time, and if anything, it's going to be a public forum to discredit me in some manner. So, why even go through with it?
What about class action and ACLU and that sort of thing?
But still, you need, some sort of evidence that this happened. If I pulled out a piece of 115 and said, here, well, what does that have to do with anything, and there's nothing that, and what did they do to violate my rights that I didn't agree to at the beginning?
Right.
So they really had their bases covered.
It's pretty dirty what they did to you in Las Vegas there in 1990 in the summer. That was pretty dirty.
What was that?
They took you to court.
Well, yeah, that was my own fault.
So you've been through your counseling
Yeah.
by saying that, right?
How would someone get a piece of paper explaining the physical properties used in this mode of transportation?
The physical properties,
Or,
you mean?
I mean the formulas used in the gravity.
You're being watched currently, if you have any interaction with
It's strange you should mention that. There's been nothing for probably these 4 years or 3 years, whatever it's been, but the other day, one of my phone lines has not been working, and the other one was breaking up, so I called Centel down, and they checked the house out and said there's nothing in the wiring here, and they called me down from Charleston Boulevard from the from the telephone pole, and they said my individual line was cut, and that the other wires were stripped and twist tied together. So, of course, me being paranoid thinks, well, someone tapped in there, but I really can't think of another excuse as me being, just my single lines being played with. But that's what he said, and they filed a report on that, so that's one form of documentation.
You say your records at Caltech and MIT have somehow disappeared?
And Los Alamos and probably everywhere else.
Is there any way you could reconstruct your coursework and your professors?
Oh, sure. I've got people that that I went to school with, and George Knapp has spoken to some of them, and he even flew with me up to Los Alamos and spoke to my colleagues there, and it's just.
Could you reveal some of your professors at MIT and Caltech?
Yeah, if you want. I don't have a list of them here. Dr. Duxler, I think, was one of them, and Hosefield was another.
Hosefield?
Hosefield. Hoshsfield or something along those lines.
They remember you?
Oh yeah, Hosefield I know well.
These are at MIT or Caltech?
Hosefield was at MIT. Duxler was at Caltech.
Yeah, who's Barry?
Barry's a guy I worked with. He essentially worked on the buddy system there, and someone you have ideas to bounce off of, and Barry Castillo or Castile.
Was he there before you, or?
Yeah, a long time.
Still there, or?
Probably still there.
Did you get any information from him?
Well, he essentially taught me everything that they had done up to date.
In the course of your work, did they ever mention any other facilities, installation around the country where associated work was being done?
No, they did mention, though, that this was the place that all of this stuff was brought to, and it was really purposely condensed here to keep an eye on everything and have immediate access to everything that dealt with this, the alien technology.
Regarding the craft, the alien craft, were there any test personnel that crashed them, and if so, do you know about what the causes were?
I didn't read about any crashes during tests at all. Though you'd think that there would be some, but I didn't.
When you were at Caltech, were you affiliated with any of the student houses?
No.
When I first heard of S4, it reminded me a lot of disk testing that I've heard of that goes on in Australia at Pine Gap. And I was wondering if you know anything about Pine Gap. Did you read anything about Pine Gap that you could tell us about?
I really don't keep abreast of the UFO information. As far as officially, I never read anything. I've heard the name Pine Gap mentioned, but I haven't heard anything about that.
Has anybody ever approached you with a screenplay offer?
Oh, God, yeah. Constantly.
Constantly? You ever consider it?
Yeah. The main problem, Columbia Pictures last year really wanted to do it, and they said we're making a screenplay, and my only problem is that if you guys are going to make a movie, it has to be exactly what happened and not the Hollywood version. I don't want to see Steven Seagal in it or anything.
I don't know too much about your experiential background or your expertise, but do you have any speculation why they recruited someone with a master's instead of a PhD? And
no, that's a really good question. I've always said there's plenty more people qualified than I am, and if there's any there's only two reasons they could have. Is either number one was that Dr. Teller essentially juiced me into the position that said, there's a guy, Bob Lazar, I know him, find a place for him, or that the fact that I have traditionally approached everything from a very strange angle and essentially off the beaten path and tackling technical problems. So it's only one of those two reasons, and unless there's a third one that I have no idea about.
Two things. Do you think they'll ever release this information? And if they don't, how do you think it'll ever come out? Besides people like, or will it be something like what you're doing?
Well, hopefully it's not this way. Hopefully there's going to be a release of information eventually, but whether or not they're going to say, hey, we've been keeping this secret for so long, it almost seems to me that they need a staged incident to get them off the hook. take a flying saucer up in a C-130 and push it out the back and say, look, it crashed. You know.
How would they overcome the G-forces and the rapid changes in direction?
They don't apply once you've distorted. Distorting gravity, essentially having a gravity amplifier, distorts time and space, and those really don't apply. There's no interaction.
So there would be no effect on humans either?
No, there's no effect inside at all.
Bob, did your, when you were working on the S4 project, did your education and whatever scientific vision that you have permit you to believe that at some point you'd be able to make a meaningful contribution to the program? And if so, after how much time approximately?
I was always in serious doubt whether or not they were going to get rid of me because there really wasn't anything that I could contribute. I wasn't an expert in any particular field that they were dealing with. So, I mean, I made some contributions as far as determining what element they were dealing with was, but...
that was significant, right?
Yeah, to some degree.
I was wondering, when you work at MIT and Caltech, I forgot if you had a master's in your doctorate or whatever, but did you come from a pretty, was your education pretty traditionally grounded as far as your own views, as far as physics and what is considered common knowledge, as opposed to theoretical things? And in other words, how surprised were you when they started showing you all of this hardware and these concepts that could do things that is really...
Oh, very. I was...
How long did it take you to like start grasping that where you could really...
Even when I was reading the documentation, you know, the alien question really never entered my mind. I kept pushing it off to, you know, all this group of scientists secretly came up with. Now, I never, and I just had a mental block against that because I always thought flying saucers were totally ridiculous, and the people that, you know, really paid attention to such phenomena were just out in left field. You know, they belong.
Thanks, Bob.
But it really made very little sense to me that you know, anyone would deal with something like that. So I really held out to the very end, and you know, they finally said, "Well, Bob," and that was it.
While at S4, did you ever hear any Air Force or military squadron numbers or names bandied about?
Yeah, I probably did, but I can't remember. I do remember someone talking about something along those lines. I don't think they were pilots, but they were someone related to the Air Force. I don't remember who, or they were talking about the Air Force, and I think they mentioned a squadron, and I don't know if that was what they called the group that flew the craft, or it was someone else, you know, at Groom Lake. But, I really don't know. No, there really wasn't much, you know, idle banter going on.
As far as like the gravitational field with these crafts and so forth, if you were to amplify it enough, could you enlarge the area that you want to take? In other words, could you move more than just the craft itself, say 2 crafts under the same power source and so forth? Or even, you know, even ever consider something like that as feasible?
Well, like a tractor beam?
It's possible, as long as they were both essentially in the field that was being emitted. I really don't know what, you know, how the level of energy relates to the amount of mass that can be bent that way, or how the amount of space that can, those numbers I really don't have, so it's just a guess.
Do you think it would be feasible?
What kind of control
Probably.
systems? What kind of control or instrument systems do they have?
I really don't know. That anything that I assume was control systems or instrumentation was up above, and I think that's where the navigation computation took place. And you know, I dealt with only the power-hungry components essentially.
When you were at S4, was there ever either a period within a day or even a couple of days where you, at this point, don't remember what you were doing during that time? And was there ever a period of time that you're not able to account for?
Yeah, I said that, and again, that's been taken and bent a lot of different ways too. There were times that I left, and it's because so much stuff I was exposed to, I was essentially drowned in information, and when I got back home, I really couldn't remember what day anything happened. But did I forget big chunks of knowledge? No, I just...
Now, were there like periods of days where you haven't recalled what happened during those days? I mean, you
No.
And second, you probably don't want to get into this, but I'd really appreciate if you would. When you were walking either by the hallway or down there, by the door with a window in it, and you look through, will you go into that and describe what you did see? I mean, even if you're not sure, say, just state it as exactly as it was.
Well, this has to be taken in the right context, too. First of all, being surrounded by the, flying saucers, knowing that the alien thing exists and all this technology. When I was walking down a hall to the, I don't remember where I was going anymore, but the different doors to the hangars are small 9-inch square windows with wire mesh running through them, and I looked in one as I walked by and was told to keep my head forward, and I saw the backs of two guys, and they were talking to a child, or I thought it was a small child, and of course when I told that to John, Larry said, that was an alien, Bob, there's no doubt. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a small guy, but it just looked weird and it was a glance, so, do I think it was an alien? No.
Did you see the quote, small guy? Did you see the small guy, or you only saw the two guys looking downward?
No, I saw the small guy.
You saw the small guy that they were talking to?
Yeah.
What did it
Well, it was just a glance. I have no idea. That's why I said, but believe me, if I had a rounded head and big eyes, I'd say, hey, there's an alien there, but I can't say that.
But it was a small,
It was something.
small person or someone they were talking
Yeah. See, I don't think anyone could bring their kids down there, so I don't know. But for that matter, they could have been holding up
to. I realize you're talking to a crowd that has had a lot of personal experience, a lot of these people.
Right, but also look at it from a technical viewpoint, that it could be a model, a life-size model, and they were trying to see how the size relationship works in the seats and other parts of the craft, and what's accessible, so it doesn't necessarily mean that it was a living being.
Thank you.
Would you mind speaking at all about how this body of knowledge has affected you emotionally or maybe spiritually? Are you frightened by the implications of what all this means, or
No.
You've no doubt thought about the overall agenda? You've speculated, I'm sure, on your own.
Yeah, but it's difficult to really, put a finger on it, since there's so little evidence to go on, and really 99% of the stuff that I hear, I really don't even come close to believing at all. And it's not just because I'm skeptical, it's because it's absolutely ridiculous. I even, though it's stepping on a lot of people's toes, I think 99% of the sightings out here are absolutely not flying saucers. Most people are watching 737s come into Groom Lake, and they turn up there, and there's lights on the planes. And along the other same lines, there's these parachuted flares that they fire off near the Papoose Lake area, and they're an orange color, which is pretty coincidental, and they're on essentially a modified small hot air balloon, so the burning heat of the flare keeps it afloat longer. And whether they're doing that for disinformation or practicing how missiles lock onto heat-seeking targets, I don't know, but I think 99% of that stuff is what people that come around this area are seeing.
It seems as if even knowing that we possess alien technology hasn't even made you a believer.
That's probably true. But it has. I mean, I believe the stuff that I worked on, there's absolutely no question in my mind. But I think everyone can only go so far, and I just hate to speculate because I hate to be wrong. I don't want to say, well, they had to be given to us because we didn't shoot them down, and it's so I just stop right there.
I think we forget sometimes you're a scientist.
Maybe so. I stop with what I'm pretty sure with them, and that's it.
What is your synopsis in a nutshell? Based upon what you saw and what you experienced.
Well, I can't. Like I said, I stopped before that. I have lots of possible ideas in my mind, but
based only on what your experience was, only on what you saw, what is your synopsis?
My synopsis of what I know to be true,
yes,
that the government is holding 9 alien spacecraft that are propelled by a modified gravity generator, the work is being conducted 15 miles south of Groom Lake at that isolated area only, designated as S4, that at least one of those crafts operate, and that's about it.
Okay, thank you.
Bob, did you ever see the...
Smell like, was there any unusual odors from the craft or anywhere else?
No, none at all.
Did you ever see the word S4 written anywhere? The letters S4?
That's a good question. Did I have PS4 written anywhere?
What was it? What was the question?
The question is, did he ever see S4 written anywhere? On your badge?
Yeah, the S4 was punched out on the badge.
Punched out, so you never saw it then?
That was more along the lines of I was thinking was a sign, and I think, because it's hard to see, I think near, when you approach the Papoose mountain range, that there is a sign that designates it as S4, but if I'm pretty sure I saw a sign there because I can only see out the front window when I'm going through there, and I'm really not sure what it said, but since most other signs designated it's an area or tech area or something along those lines, that might have been S4 if that's what you're referring to.
So you just heard it orally, S4 orally, and that's how you know to designate that.
Well, yeah, and as someone else mentioned on the badge, it was star punched out there. But as far as an actual sign to the area, I didn't see it in any other writing.
So did you ever see it on the badge? Though? Since it was punched out, you wouldn't see it.
Well, that's it. It really says it directly above it. I mean, the star punch.
Oh, so how was it written? S4?
S-4.
Oh, a dash. There's a hyphen in there?
Yeah.
Oh. Because Bill Moore's making a big thing. I says, how do you write it? He's talking to George Knapp, trying to debunk the whole thing. How do you write S4?
Does that make a difference?
Right.
Well, that's what you call picking nits.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's a lot of people that don't believe the story, altogether. But it's difficult. There's really a limit to what else could I possibly do, to show people what happened, other than relaying some of the information and things along those lines. But,
what kind of work are you doing now?
a variety of things. I mean, everything from I have 3 separate companies. One is deals with commercial photo processing. The other one is developing and repairing alpha radiation detectors for radiation off of plutonium, which unfortunately that's going down the tubes because they stopped the testing out here. And I do computer graphics, a lot of that, and actually music videos, believe it or not.
Are you still building and racing jet cars?
Well, I don't do it for money anymore. Now I just take the jet car out and run it around. But I kind of got scared when I originally started racing jet cars. There were like 25 people or something along those lines that were licensed to drive, and now there's like 7. And the guy, when I stopped racing, the guy that trained me crashed. So everyone else is dead. So I don't race anymore.
Do you still have the Lamborghini?
The body's sitting in the backyard. The car I take out once every couple of weeks to the dry lake and play around.
2 questions. Do you have any idea how they achieved that proton source at the steady stream of such a small reactor?
It could be a radioactive element. I mean, you could use. Well, a proton source could certainly be. They could be using alpha particles for that matter, which is essentially a helium nuclei, and there's lots of elements that can do that.
And the other part is, in the video we saw, the badge had the letters in capital letters, MAJ, written turnover side. Was that actually on your badge?
Yeah, that was really on there, and I was told Majestic was the level of clearance that was cleared for. That makes you wonder about Bill Moore's thing at the MJ12 documents and all that. Or is that actual, or considering that these guys had made posters that they're here and things like that, they could have taken Majestic and made it the name of it just as kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, or was that actual evidence that Majestic 12 actually existed and all that? So.
What about your other associates? Did their badge look identical to the one we saw? Or were
Pretty much so, except Dennis's looked different, and for the most part they had different areas punched in them.
you.